What if the people who survive best aren't the ones who love hardship, but the ones who quietly make life feel almost boring, even when everything should be terrifying? It's a strange thought, isn't it? You grow up hearing that real survival has to hurt. That struggle means you're doing something important. But then you meet the kind of person who tightens a line, hangs the food, checks on everyone's blisters, and somehow the disaster never quite turns into a disaster. I've always been fascinated by that quiet type of competence, the kind that doesn't look like heroism until you see the data. Because imagine this. There's a brutal off-world survival course designed by someone who believes fear is the only honest teacher. Mixed species teams, thin air, engineered predators, storms on a schedule. And into that walks one human who glances around and says, "Dead serious, so this is like a group camping trip, right?" If you're curious how that goes, settle in with whatever makes you comfortable, because we're going to drift down to Aster Vale Academy, where an old professor watches from orbit and waits for this camping human to finally crack. And you're going to walk beside her on the first day she steps onto that gray training moon. The first thing they teach at Aster Vale is supposed to hurt. The second thing they never plan for is a human who looks at the hardest course in the program, shrugs, and says, "So, this is like a group camping trip, right?" This story follows that human. Riley Morgan does not fight the storm. She checks the wind, tightens a line, and makes tea. She does not chase the fake predators across the rocks. She hangs the food, cleans the camp, and tells a story about bears back in Colorado, while other cadets burn their energy on fear and pride. She keeps building little systems that make things simple, safe, and almost boring. From above, in the control room, Professor Keth Varn watches the data and waits for her to break. Instead, her heart rate stays low. Her team's sleep stays deep. Tempers stay cool. Injuries stay rare. She passes the brutal exo-survival Practicum 7 with better numbers than any crew in years. And she does it without hero moments. This is not a story about winning against nature. It is a slow walk through a new idea. That real survival feels calm, kind, and almost gentle. That the strongest people are not the loudest, but the ones who pack an extra meal and share it. You will see the thin air, taste the cold, hear the strange night animals, and feel the way small habits turn fear into steady sleep. By the time the course is over, the hardest thing may not be staying alive. It may be letting go of the old idea that pain is the only real teacher. By the late 25th century, Aster Vale Academy hung in a silver line over a bright F-type star. From orbit, the training moon below looked calm and gray, with streaks of ice near the poles and folded mountain ranges like sleeping animals. Every cadet knew better. That quiet moon held the hardest days of their student life. The school itself was old by space standards. It had started as a small research ring built by 3 allied species that were tired of learning by disaster. They wanted a place to train people for new worlds before any real planets paid the price. Over time, more species joined. They added wide garden decks, long, quiet libraries, zero-gravity courts, and small homes for families and visiting scholars. But the true test of Aster Vale was not in orbit. It was down there on the training moon. It was called Exo-Survival Practicum 7. Most cadets just called it 7 or the SCAR course. Not because it hurt bodies badly. The medical limits were strict and safe. It hurt pride. It showed people the parts of themselves they did not like to see. Panic, blame, selfishness, or stubborn refusal to ask for help. The course rules were simple and strict. Mixed species teams were dropped on the moon with limited gear. They had to reach a series of waypoints, manage food and water, handle harsh weather, and keep every member healthy. No outside help unless a life was in danger. No repairs from orbit, no hidden bonus supplies. The moon itself was a work of care and skill. Its air was thin but safe to breathe, for most species. With minor filters, the gravity was a little lighter than Earth standard, so falls hurt less but still taught respect. The weather shifted fast with sharp drops at night and sudden rough winds during the day. Engineered animals moved across the plains and cliffs. None were meant to kill, but teeth and claws still taught caution. Above all, the moon was built to push people just past comfort. No farther. Professor Keth Varn liked it that way. Keth was from a high-gravity ocean world. His body was tall and spare, with long arms and hands that moved like careful tools. Old scars crossed his skin, pale against a soft gray-blue tone. They were from a youth spent in training currents and ground drills. To him, discomfort was not a mistake. It was a message. He taught that message in every class. Survival, he said, was not a game. It was not a chance to show off or to prove bravery. It was a grind, a slow scrape against limits. Students needed to feel that scrape, or they would trust luck. And luck did not care about anyone. Over the years, Keth shaped Practicum 7 into something almost famous. He tuned the weather cycles. He set the food rations low, but not cruel. He added the night hunger predator system to test camp discipline. He built tiny map errors into the navigation tools, just enough to see who would stay calm and check landmarks. He believed that fear, handled correctly, made people honest. In his office, the week before a new run of 7, he scrolled through the roster for the coming field group. Dozens of names, species, home systems, biometrics, academic records, prior field ratings. His eyes paused at the file for the single human cadet. Riley Morgan, age 22, exchange student from a small human university near Boulder, Colorado. Planet Earth, or Sol 3, as the older records still called it. Keth had strong opinions about humans. Most of what he knew came from old military history and new rescue reports. Their homeworld was listed as a deathworld in several databases. Heavy gravity, strong storms, many pathogens, large predators, thick atmosphere. Under most measures, it was more dangerous than the gentle garden worlds where many other academy students grew up. As a group, humans had a reputation, quick to adapt, quick to bond, quick to risk, and not always careful with their own bodies. Some stories called them reckless, others called them brave. Keth called them concerning. He opened Riley's background. No combat training, but strong marks in field ecology, group psychology, and emergency management. Records of long hiking trips, volunteer work in wildfire relief zones, dozens of boring things packed into a quiet life. He frowned slightly at the screen. There were no signs of the wild glory seeker type he had expected. No record of extreme sports, dangerous stunts, or high-risk behavior. Just steady, repeated service and lots of time outdoors. He flagged her file with a small note to watch closely. On the arrival day, the staging bay rang with soft footsteps, and the sounds of gear checks. Pack straps clicked. Thermal fabrics rubbed. Somewhere, a nervous tail thumped against a crate, and the owner pulled it close with a small apology. Riley walked in with a slow, even step. She was mid-height, with dark brown hair braided back in a simple line. Her skin was sun-browned from years under real skies. Her eyes moved easily over the room, taking in faces, exits, gear piles, and the wide doors that would later lead to the dropcraft. Her clothing looked plain compared to some others. A layered base suit, a light environment jacket, good boots. No extra armor plates, no flashy sensor rigs. Her pack was neat, compact, and well-balanced. Keth watched from an upper platform behind a pane of smart glass. Beside him, an assistant adjusted hollows of the weather schedule for the first days. The professor's eyes stayed on Riley. Down on the floor, groups formed by assignment. Riley joined Team 13, a mix of species with different strengths. Vale, a slim, violet-skinned student from a high-pressure world, adjusted a chest harness and gave Riley a quick nod. A broad-shouldered insectoid cadet named Tress clicked mandibles, eyes glittering with nervous energy. A soft-furred, long-limbed climber from a low-gravity moon stretched in slow arcs. Introductions started, simple and quiet. Riley's voice carried a flat earth accent, the kind that came from mid-sized cities near mountains. When she said she was from near Boulder, Colorado, a few didn't know the place, but they knew Deathworld. Earth and their pupils widened. "You chose 7 as an exchange?" Tress asked, antennae tilting. "From a Deathworld, after what your kind already handle." Riley smiled in a calm, almost shy way. "This seemed useful," she said. "Also, the terrain shots look a bit like home, just without the trees, Vea repeated softly, as if that detail made the whole thing stranger. While other cadets did last-minute strength drills or checked weapons again and again, Riley unpacked and repacked her gear in a simple pattern. Food packed by meal, water pouches checked for leaks, shelter fabric folded for fast use. She laid things out, then put them back in the same order. Her hands moved with a kind of practiced boredom, like she had done this 100 times. She tied a bright cord to one zipper pull and double-checked it, then nodded to herself. Vea watched, head slightly tilted. "You seem very calm. she said. Most people walk like they are going to their own trial. Riley glanced up, then down at her own boots. This reminds me of trips I did as a kid, she said, just with more stars and fewer mosquitoes. She paused, then added, if we treat it like a long, organized camping trip, a lot will feel easier. Camping, Tress repeated, testing the word like it was strange food. Yeah, Riley said. Like going out, living outside for some days. You plan, you set camp early, you keep it clean, you eat on time, you help each other. Same basic idea, Same basic idea, just here. High above, Keth heard that through a stray open mic. His jaw set. This is not camping, he said, under his breath. In his mind, camping was leisure, a human word for chosen discomfort with an easy way out. Practicum 7 was not leisure. It was built to strip away illusions and show real limits. Taking it lightly was dangerous. He made another mental note on Riley Morgan. As the final checks finished, instructors moved through the bay, giving short talks. Rules again. Safety again. The reminder that the course would push them, but medical overrides would keep bodies safe. They were there to learn, not to be broken. Riley listened, eyes steady, hands folded on her pack straps. When others bounced on their toes or stretched, she breathed slow and deep, counting each inhale. It was a trick from high school drills. Calm breath before alarms. To the side, Vale leaned close. Have you done anything like this, off-world? She asked. Riley shook her head. First time off Earth, she said, but we had wildfire seasons, snowstorms, power outages, and evacuation drills. We camped a lot. We trained a lot. Stress feels familiar. Her smile was small and honest. It helps. The question started to rise in Keth's mind as he watched her. Was this quiet human underestimating the course, or was everyone else overestimating danger she already understood? He did not know yet that her camping mindset would soon pull his whole practicum into question. The drop craft slid down through thin clouds and into the bright upper air of the training moon. Seats trembled softly. Harnesses hummed with low safety fields. Outside, the ground grew from a gray blur into clear shapes, broken ridges, scattered boulders, long flats of pale sand, and dark streaks where frozen ground met exposed stone. Inside, Team 13 sat in a tight cluster. Vea's hands cupped and uncapped a small pressure gauge. Over and over, Tress tapped armored feet in a nervous rhythm. The climber student Leary flexed long fingers, testing grip pads. Riley watched the window. She was not looking for beauty. She was looking for campsites, narrow gullies, risk of flash frost or water surge if the weather system played tricks. Sharp ridges, good for signals, bad for wind. Flat open plains, easy walking, little cover. She noticed a low line of rounded rocks that formed a shallow bowl near a small rise. In her mind, it filed itself away. Bowl means some windbreak, Rise means quick view for checks. The craft set down in a burst of cold air and grit. The hatch lowered. The outside pressed in, the different taste of non-Earth air. The way sound felt slightly thinner, like it had less to push against. Riley took a breath through her nose. Dry, a bit sharp, but safe. Her chest felt a little more work on each inhale, the way high mountain hikes had always felt at home. Remember, came an instructor's voice from the small drone hovering near the door. You have 3 standard days to reach your final point. No outside input, no shortcuts. Use your maps, your heads, and each other. Then they were on the ground, packs on, the drop craft lifting away in a blast of dust that faded into the bright sky. The first minutes mattered more than anyone liked to admit. Many teams stumbled here. Some rushed in the wrong direction, eager to move. Others froze, staring at their maps, arguing over lines and symbols. Riley dragged a slow breath in, feeling the pack weight settle onto hips and shoulders. "Can we take 5 minutes?" she asked, voice carrying just enough to reach the team. Just to check wind, light, and map against the Rio ground. Vale's eyes darted between her, the departing craft, and the open plain. "We will lose time," Vale said, though there was no anger in it, only old habit. "We lose more if we start wrong," Riley replied. "Quick check, then we move smoother." There was a tiny pause. Then Tress clicked mandibles in agreement. 5 minutes, Tress said, "then march." Riley turned her face to the air. Fine grit touched her cheeks. Her braids pulled slightly to one side. She licked her lips, felt where they dried faster. The wind was coming on a slant from their left. Steady, not gusting hard yet. Good to know for later, when they chose shelter. She crouched, scooped a little handful of the sandy soil, let it run through gloved fingers, grain size, moisture, how it held shape, all small hints at how cold the nights might cut, how water might move if there was sudden melt. Then she opened her map. The course designers had built in tiny errors. A ridge marked 20 meters off, a dry channel missing, a small lake slightly misplaced. It was enough to set off arguments if teams trusted the map more than their eyes. Riley did not. Years of walking real trails had taught her that no map was perfect. She traced their planned route with a finger, then looked up at the land. There, the rise she had seen. There, the shallow bowl of rocks. The drawn contours almost matched, but not quite. "Map's a little off here," she said simply. "Not huge. We just need to use sight too. Let's aim for that low ridge as our first goal. It lines up with the general direction and gives us a view." They agreed, and they walked. The first hours passed in a steady pace. The gravity made their steps just a bit longer, their packs feel just a bit lighter. It was easy to overdo it in that kind of field, to push fast and then crash. Riley set a rhythm that sat in the middle, not lazy, not rushed. Every 45 minutes she called for a short break, long enough to drink, adjust straps, stretch, short enough that muscles did not cool fully, and complain. No one. Their breathing evened out instead of spiking and dropping. In the control room above the moon, Keth and his team watched from a cluster of feeds. Little icons pulsed with heart rates and body temperatures. Team 13's graph lines looked almost boring. No spikes, no sharp dips. Keth stared at Riley's feed. Her resting heart rate had risen with the work, but it stayed in a smooth band. Her stress markers were low, well below most first-timers on 7. Maybe she is masking reactions, the assistant suggested. Some species learn that very young. Maybe, Keth said. But he had seen masking before. It still left traces in the body. This looked less like forced calm and more like simple readiness. As the artificial sun dipped, the temperature drop came sharp and quick. A thin haze of crystal formed near low spots, glittering faintly. Many teams pushed to reach their first waypoint before making camp. The design rewarded that choice with harder setup and near-dark, tired hands, and more mistakes. Riley watched the sky, then the team's steps. Vea's gait had grown a little uneven. Lyris' long arms hung slightly lower. Tress's armor plates clicked more often. Let's start looking for camp, Riley said. We can reach the next waypoint fresh in the morning. We still have some light, so we pick well. Regulations say we should reach at least 2 waypoints on day 1, Vea said, almost out of reflex. Regulations say we should stay healthy. Riley answered, tone still mild. Burn out early, and day 3 will be worse than needed. First night sets the base. Keth heard that through their shared mic channel. His brow drew tight. He had written those regulations. He had not meant them to be taken so literally. But he could not argue with the logic behind her choice. Riley scanned the land ahead. The bowl of rocks she had noticed from the drop craft was now off to their right, about a 10-minute walk away. The ground around it sloped just enough to drain water, if any came. The rise beyond it could break the worst of the wind. There, she said, pointing. See the curve of the rocks? The slope will keep us drier. We set up low, not tall, so the air moves over us instead of grabbing us. Tress squinted, then nodded. Looks reasonable, they said. They walked the short distance, then dropped packs in a rough circle. Riley walked a bit more, checking small details. Loose stones that might roll under a sleeping mat, small animal burrows that might lead to night trouble, the exact line of the wind. She had learned long ago that camp habits shaped nights more than anything. On Earth, a tent in the wrong low spot meant waking in cold water. A camp near old food scraps meant raccoons or bears poking around at 3 in the morning. Here, the wildlife was simulated, but the rules were the same. Let's get shelters up now, before we are cold, she said. Then eat while we still feel warm from walking. If we wait, we will eat, tired and shaky. They set to work. Vea's hands, used to tools, handled poles with care. Tress' strong arms braced fabric against the wind, gusts. Leary climbed to the low rise to fix a small guideline around a rock. Riley showed them how to keep shelter profiles low, so the wind had less to grab. She picked a spot for a small shared cook area, slightly downwind, far enough from sleeping spots to keep smells away. She cleared it of loose debris with quick, efficient sweeps. Then she marked a clean line where food would stay, and a second line for waste. Nothing would cross from one to the other. Seems strict, Tress said, watching the little layout. Where I grew up, this keeps bears away, Riley said. Here, it might keep whatever night hunger uses as a nose away. They had heard of night hunger, of course. Every cadet did. It was the course's moving predator system, shaped by sensors and drones. It did not truly eat, but it reacted like a hunting thing, pulled towards smells, careless trash, messy camps. It taught fear and discipline at the same time. Riley had not seen it yet. She still planned for it the way she planned for any big animal. They ate early, as she had pushed for. Food never tasted as good as it did after work and before cold. Warm packets, simple grains, a bit of protein, careful sips of water. Riley chewed slowly, making herself feel the act of eating instead of rushing. It told her nervous system that there was no famine, no desperate chase, just food. Here, now, around them, the wind grew sharper. The sky deepened to a darker violet. Strange sounds drifted from farther hills. Something like distant chimes, then a low drone, then a sudden high cry that cut off fast. Lyra's fingers tightened around the spoon. That does not sound like any simulation I practiced with, they said quietly. It is supposed to unsettle you, Vea said. That is the point. Riley swallowed another bite, then looked toward the sound. On Earth, the woods are loud at night, she said. Owls, coyotes, insects, branches in the wind. First time camping as a kid, I thought every sound meant danger. I barely slept. Second time, my dad said, if they wanted to hurt you, they would not warn you by making that much noise. She smiled faintly. Most of the time, the loudest things are just living their lives. The real problem is often quiet. Rotten branch, loose rock, slow leak in a water bag. As if on cue, she checked her own water pouch, fingers running along the seam. No leak. She went around the circle, tapping each person's gear. Check your water, she said. Then check your feet. Blisters grow at night. They did as she asked. Vea found a strap that had already rubbed skin raw. They padded it before sleep. Tress found a small crease in a boot lining and smoothed it. Leary found that their water pouch had a weak seam, not quite leaking yet, but close. Riley showed how to support it with extra wrap and set it lighting side down, where gravity would not push as hard on the flaw. These little moves took 10 minutes. In the control room, Keth watched the 10 minutes and frowned. Most teams were still trying to reach their second waypoint in the dimming light. Their heart rates were higher. Their voices, caught through stray transmissions, had a hard edge as they argued about speed and rest. Team 13, by contrast, had finished setting camp early. Their bodies were still cooling from the day's walk, not chilled to the bone. Their water issues were caught before sleep. Their shelters were low, steady, and set with the wind in mind. These are camping routines, Keth's assistant said, reading off the notes. Standard procedures from several human and allied outdoor cultures. We have all of this in the library. It just rarely shows up in 7, because they treat this as combat, not camping, Keth said slowly. Most think the threat is the course itself, not their own poor habits. Night came down full and fast. The last light drained from the sky, leaving a field of sharp stars and the pale arc of Aster Vale. High above, the air dropped cold enough to bite exposed skin. Team 13 crawled into their shelters in an orderly way. No mad rush. Boots went in a set spot, ready for a fast exit if needed. Packs were organized so no one would stumble over them in a dark panic. Food was hung out of reach in a simple, clever rig Riley showed them, the line angle to make sense travel up and away with the wind. Before lying down, Riley gathered them for a brief check. Everyone drink a bit more water, she said. Not too much, but enough. Dehydration hits faster in dry air, and it will make you feel more scared than you are. Eat a last small bite of something simple. Then we sleep in turns for the first half of the night. Full sleep second half if all is quiet. Why not stay up and keep watch the whole night? Leary asked. Because tired brains make bad calls, Riley said. We do short watches at first to adjust to the sounds. After that, full sleep will do more for us than staring into the dark. Our shelters and food setup already lower the risk. They agreed. They were tired. Sleep sounded good. As the first watch passed, every gust of wind and distant animal call felt huge. But the camp did not move. No lines snapped. No shelter flapped loose. No food bag swung low. Riley's routines had taken away the easy failures, so the team could let their bodies rest. Biometric graphs in the control room showed the change. Heart rates slowed, respiration smoothed, markers of stress drifted toward calm. Even as the environment around them stayed harsh, Keth stared at the numbers. Typically, night 1 on 7 produced spikes. People lay awake, jumped at every noise, argued in hushed tones, checked maps again and again in fear of being behind. Riley's team had none of that. This is not courage, Keth said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. This is good systems. He pulled up a comparison. Another team, still walking at dusk, had tripped a mild injury flag. Someone had twisted an ankle in low light. Their camp setup started late. With colder hands, their sleep graphs, he knew from experience, would show shallow rest and frequent wake events. Down on the moon, within the small shelter, Riley lay on her back, breath slow. She listened to the strange night noises. She cataloged them. Distant, near, moving left to right. Higher, lower. Her nervous system learned that these sounds at this distance did not mean direct danger. She thought about her first overnight in a backyard tent as a child. She remembered listening to neighbors' cars, to dogs to the buzz of streetlights, and thinking the world outside, the thin fabric was full of threat. In the morning, she had woken safe, a little embarrassed at how scared she had been. Now, lying under alien stars, she felt the same trick of the brain. Just in a new skin, night talked, and the mind wrote stories. She smiled in the dark. It is just camping, she thought, not carelessly, but with quiet respect. Different place, same rules. Her body believed the routine. It believed the early food, the checked water, the planned camp. It believed the shared tasks and honest talk. That belief showed up in her biometrics as something very simple. She fell asleep sooner than most, and her sleep ran deeper. By morning, her team would wake with more energy, more patience, and more room in their minds for clear choices. Their buffers of rest, of water, of trust would be slightly larger than other teams. That difference was small in any single moment. But small differences, multiplied over days, could change everything about how hard the course felt. Above, Keth watched the graphs settle and felt an old idea shift almost against his will. Maybe survival did not need to feel like constant pain to work. Maybe the scar did not have to be sharp. Down on the moon, Riley turned in her sleep, sighed once, and settled again, as if under a familiar sky. Morning on the training moon came with hard light and a thin, biting chill. Frost clung to the shaded sides of rocks, shining like ground glass. Team 13 stepped out of their shelters with stiff legs but clear eyes. They had slept. They had not slept perfectly, of course. There had been watch changes, strange sounds, and the odd jolt awake from a dream. But compared to most first nights on Practicum 7, their rest had been deep. Their faces showed it. Less gray under the eyes, steadier steps, fewer sharp words. Riley stretched her arms over her head, felt a small pull in her shoulders, and smiled. "That went better than my first night in a tent," she said. Vale rubbed her hands together near the small heating unit. "You keep saying that," she said. "Like this is normal for you. Different sky, same skills." Riley replied, "We eat, we pack, we move. First hours of the day are usually the best for covering distance. Bodies are fresh. Air is calm." They ate a quick, warm breakfast. Riley made sure they drank before the sun rose high, when thirst would sneak up faster. She checked feet again, like a habit she could not shake. Small hot spots on skin were caught and padded before they became real blisters. From the control room, Keth watched these small decisions stack up. No part of what Riley did was rare knowledge. Every step came from things people had known for centuries on many worlds. But she was actually doing them all at once without acting like any of it was special. "Look at their energy readings," Keth's assistant said. "They are starting day 2 in better shape than most first-time teams." Keth grunted. "Night 3 usually changes that," he said. "Wait until the system triggers freezing rain and night hunger in the same cycle. Calm does not last forever." He spoke like someone who believed that, but a small part of him already wondered. As the team walked through the morning, the course shifted around them. The weather program brought high winds over distant ridges, gusts that stirred dust into thin veils. Far away, the temperature rose, but never fully lost its bite. Shadows stretched and shortened as they crossed folds of land. By midday, clouds rolled in. They were thin at first, like a light lid over the sun. Then they thickened into a flat gray cover that dulled colors and made the land look colder. Riley saw the change and checked her internal clock. The course designers liked to stack stress on the second and third nights. That meant bad weather or predator movements timed with fatigue. She guessed both. "We should plan for early shelter again," she said when they paused on a rise. "But this time, we add extra lines. That cloud cover looks like trouble." Vale pulled up the course-issued weather forecast on a small device. The display showed only minor changes. A chance of wind, slight chance of ice. "Weather says nothing large," she noted. Riley shrugged. "On Earth, forecasts are sometimes wrong," she said. "Clouds this thick often mean something. We can give ourselves a margin with a few more anchor points." Cheap insurance was another Riley phrase. She used it for all the tiny actions that cost almost nothing but saved a lot of pain later. Tying off a loose strap, drying socks during the lunch break, checking for ticks after a hike. Here, extra lines and stronger knots fit the same rule. They pushed toward their next waypoint, moving with a pace that was not fast, but did not flag. Wind started to slide down from the higher ground, carrying a smell like metal and ice. By late afternoon, small pellets of freezing rain began to fall. They were not heavy. At first, just enough to sting cheeks and coat rocks in a slick, dangerous glaze. Teams caught in open flats without warning would slip and fall, burn energy just staying upright, and then fight with numb fingers to pitch shelters in the stinging cold. Riley had seen hailstorms come over the Rockies like this. Her shoulders tensed, then settled. "All right," she said. "Steady. We adjust." They shifted their route slightly, aiming for a cluster of larger boulders. Ahead, the stones stuck from the ground like blunt teeth, breaking the wind. Riley picked a camp spot where melted ice would drain away and not pool under sleeping areas. "Shelters low and tight," she said. "Extra lines on the windward side. Anything that can collect ice, shake it off every now and then." The rain grew harder as they worked. Pellets bounced off helmets and hoods. The air burned in their noses. Riley's gloves stiffened a bit with cold, but she kept her movements brisk and simple. No fancy knots, just reliable ones she could tie half asleep. Inside the shelters, the thin walls boomed with each burst of freezing rain. It sounded worse than it was. Random drumming filled the space between breaths. Tress flinched at a heavy burst. "On my home moon, this would mean structural damage," they said. "On my home mountains, this often meant a bad drive home," Riley said. Lips quirked. But tents held. We just had to set them right. She checked the time. They had made camp with even more daylight to spare than the first night, because they had trusted the sky over the course forecast. That gave them a buffer to warm up, change damp base layers, and get food into their systems before the cold stole appetite. In the control room, Keth watched with a tight jaw. Other teams were still out, trying to push to their planned waypoints. Drone feeds showed students slipping on frozen rock, cursing as they caught their weight badly. A few triggered minor injury reports. Instructors kept hands near override switches, ready to pull anyone in danger of breaking bones. Team 13's graphs told a very different story. Core temperatures dipped, then came back up once shelters were closed and heating units set. Heart rates rose during setup, then drifted toward calm as their bodies warmed and food hit their stomachs. Keth could not deny it. Riley's cautious, soft planning was making his harsh course easier for her team than he had intended. He wanted to dismiss it as luck. He knew better. She was reading the land and sky with long practice. It was not magic. It was experience. Night 2 brought a new layer of stress. The rain eased after dark, leaving behind slick surfaces and thin ice sheets. The wind stayed high, keening around the rocks in a strange hollow way. Then, as if the moon itself had taken a breath, a new sound rolled across the plain. It was a low, pulsing growl too deep for some ears to catch, too high in parts for others. It rose and fell, sometimes far away, sometimes near enough that the shelters trembled. It did not sound like any normal animal. It sounded like a system built to pull at fear. Night hunger was awake. Riley felt the sound in her chest more than in her ears. It vibrated through the ground, a slow, hunting feel. She swallowed and made herself breathe evenly. Fear spread fast in close quarters. She could feel vast tension beside her, see Lyra's eyes go wide in the dim light. "I hate that noise," Lyra said softly. "It feels like it is inside my bones." "That is the point," Vale muttered. Riley shifted, pulling her knees closer. "Back home," she said quietly, "we talk a lot about bears in camps. People want to go out into nature, but then they treat it like a clean, empty park. They leave food out, they toss scraps near tents. Then bears come, because of course they do. After that, authorities have to trap or kill them. The bear did nothing wrong. It just followed its nose." Her voice stayed low and even. She was not giving a speech. She was talking to herself as much as to them. "So my family had rules," she went on. "No food where we sleep. All food tied and hung. All trash sealed. No strong scents like sweet soaps near tents. We did not try to beat the bear. We tried to stay boring to the bear." She tapped the shelter fabric gently. "Night hunger is a system that acts like a big, curious predator. It goes where the smells and noise are. If we keep our camp clean, quiet, and not very interesting, it will likely pass us by. It will go for the loud, messy teams first." In the control room, Keth listened with a mixture of interest and unease. Night hunger was his favorite part of the course. It was a network of drones, ground sensors, and moving decoys. It reacted to heat, scent markers from food waste, sudden big movements, and loud noises. It never harmed students, but it got close enough to make them feel hunted. Riley had guessed its logic without seeing a single unit. As the growls rolled closer, students in other camps panicked. Some shouted. Some grabbed makeshift weapons and formed shaky circles. Some ran in brief, foolish dashes, as if distance could help. All of that made night hunger tighten its circle. Sensors pinged, drones shifted, eyes skittered closer to noisy, smelly, chaotic camps. Team 13 did almost nothing. They checked lines once. They checked that the food rigging Riley had set was still high and upwind. They spoke in low voices, if they spoke at all. Mostly they lay still and let their hearts pound inside their chests. Doing nothing feels wrong, Tress said finally. Their mandibles clicked in small, nervous jerks. On my world, if something like that came close, we would draw it away or fight it. If we poke at this thing, we teach the course that we are interesting, Riley said. We make ourselves the center of the story. I do not want to be the main plot for Night Hunger. I want to be background. She thought of all the people on Earth who had tried to fight floods, fight wildfires, fight storms, as if they could win. She thought of the ones who had stepped aside, built with the river's path, cleared brush, in careful lines, made room for fires so they did not have to burn everything. Sometimes survival is not about being powerful, she added in a softer voice. It is about being uninteresting to the worst things. The growl swelled, then dropped again. Something heavy padded past. Outside their little world of fabric and air, Leary squeezed their eyes shut. Vea counted breaths silently. Riley fixed her focus on the steady push and pull of her lungs. In the control room, Keth watched Night Hunger's path. The system's map showed glowing marks where it sensed strong smells and large movements. Several camps were bright. Team 13 barely showed up at all. Their food scents were faint and downwind. Their heat signatures were low and compact. Night Hunger passed them with only a brief pause, as if checking and then losing interest. Keth frowned. They did not win that event, he said out loud, almost in defense. They just did not trigger it. The assistant glanced at him. Is that not the safest outcome? They asked. Keth did not answer. He did not like admitting that his favorite fear test could be treated like a simple bear problem. It felt like Riley was looking at his course the way she looked at weather reports. Useful, but not special. Later that night, when the growl had faded to a far-off throb and the wind settled into a lower, less sharp rush, Vea turned toward Riley in the dim. Do humans always think this way about danger? She asked. Riley thought for a moment. Not always, she said. We have stories about heroes who fight storms, fight mountains, fight everything. But where I grew up, we also had public service ads and school drills. We talked about seat belts, flood zones, evacuation routes. We watched videos of disasters. Over and over, not for fun. Disaster culture, Vea said, tasting the phrase. You grow up knowing things go wrong. Yeah, Riley said. You learn that a house can burn, A river can rise. A road can ice over. You see pictures of people stuck on roofs or trapped in cars. You hear about neighbors who lost homes. It stops feeling rare. So you plan, not because you are afraid all the time, but because you know it could be you. Someday. Tress shifted. On my moon, disasters were rare, they said slowly. We built strong structures, deep roots. We trained for war, but not for storms. Maybe that is why this course feels like such a shock. Riley considered that. I think if you grow up around constant small risks, you learn to lower the drama, she said. If every snowstorm was a big story, people would just burn out. Instead, you check your car, you pack a blanket, you make soup, and you stay inside. It becomes routine. She yawned, her body heavy with the day's work, and the tension of night hungers pass. Survival does not always feel like a battle, she added, voice drifting. Sometimes it feels like packing lunch the night before. Vale let out a small, surprised laugh. That sounds too simple. Simple is hard to sell, Riley replied, but it works. In the control room, Keth replayed that little conversation 3 times. He zoomed in on Riley's face as she spoke. There was no smugness, no desire to sound wise. She was just stating what she had lived. He thought of his own youth, trained in deep ocean drills, where pressure could crush a body in seconds. His mentors had taught through pain and fear, because those were the only tools they trusted. He had carried that into his teaching, sure that any softer approach would fail. Students later, but now, watching Riley's team handle freezing rain and night hunger with early camps, good hygiene and less drama than some teams showed over a torn boot, he felt something shift. Maybe he had built 7 on the wrong model of toughness. On day 3, the weather program pushed harder. The course designers liked to test willpower after 2 nights of poor sleep. For many, this was where tempers snapped, mistakes multiplied, and blame spread like spilled oil. Team 13 started the day tired, but not broken. Night hunger's pass had spiked their stress. The freezing rain had cost them heat. Still, their bodies had had enough real rest to repair some of the damage. They walked more quietly that morning. No one joked. The sky had that sharp, too clear look that often came after storms. Washed clean, but still cold. Around midday, as they crossed a wide basin filled with small, loose rocks, a distant flare shot up in the sky. It was bright orange, cutting through the pale air. Tress stopped short. Distress signal, they said. Another team is in trouble. Vale pulled up the shared course network. A small icon blinked far to their left, near a line of steep ridges. That is, off our planned route, she said. If we go help, we will lose time. Maybe too much. Riley followed the line with her eyes. The direct path to the final waypoint ran straight ahead. The path to the distressed team cut sideways over trickier ground. Her mental map of their supplies and energy ran in the background like a quiet program. She thought about water levels, food left the state of their feet and joints, the time until dark. She thought about the way they had built small buffers for 2 days straight. Extra rest, saved energy, uninjured bodies. We can reach them, she said slowly, and still finish if we accept a harder last push. Vale chewed her lip. Course rules say to prioritize our own mission unless lives are at risk, she said. We do not know how bad it is. Flare means they'd burned a big resource, Riley said. They would not do that for a torn strap, even if it is not life and death. It is serious. I did not grow up walking past people who needed help. Her words hung in the thin air. In the control room, Keth stiffened. This was the choice he had built into the course: self-focus or mutual aid. Most teams under stress chose themselves. A few tried to help and failed, both tasks. Today, Folt's tasks, almost none managed to help and still finish on time. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on the small group of figures on the basin floor. Vale looked torn. Her home culture valued team success above almost all else. Diverting from the set path felt dangerous, almost shameful. Yet the idea of ignoring a distress flare also felt wrong. Our buffers, Riley said quietly. They are there for something like this. We have saved energy by not fighting the course all the time. We have less damage to deal with. We can spend some of that on others. Tress clicked their mandibles in thought. If we help, they said, and still complete our route, that proves more than if we finish fast and alone. Leary nodded, eyes more sure than before. I agree, they said. What is the point of training for rescue and relief work if we practice leaving people behind? That settled it. Riley adjusted their route. They moved toward the flare, angling along the basin wall, where footing was more stable. Their pace quickened, but not to a frantic run. There was no sense in turning themselves into new casualties. As they walked, Riley checked her pack. She knew exactly how much extra food she had set aside. A bar here, a half portion there. Small things she had not eaten because she knew days like this could come. She had also kept a bit of extra medical tape and a spare insulating wrap. Keth watched the quiet calculations and felt something press hard in his chest. He had designed Practicum 7 to be harsh but safe. He had never meant for it to teach selfishness. Yet, over time, that was what many students had taken from it. Look out for your own group. Do not get dragged down by others. Misery is a contest you win by being less miserable than the next camp. Now, a human who treated his proud scar course like organized camping was showing him a different lesson. You prepare not just for yourself, but so you can carry others without falling apart. As Team 13 reached the ridge line, the sound of strained voices reached them. 2 cadets from another team sat on the ground, one clutching a badly twisted leg. Their shelter pack lay torn open nearby, contents scattered. A third member paced in a tight circle, clearly panicked. Riley slowed as they approached, hands open, voice steady. We are from Team 13, she called. We saw your flare. Who is hurt? And what do you need? The injured cadet's face was pale. The boot twisted at an angle. No joint should take. They had tried to walk on it. The attempt showed in the bruises and the way their body leaned. Course Medrone is still 10 minutes out, the pacing student said. Words fast and tight. We tried to move them closer to our route, and it went badly. Riley crouched, eyes scanning the area. Okay, she said. First, we get weight off that leg. Then we get shelter around them to cut wind while we wait. After that, we see what supplies you have left. Her team moved without needing many words. Vale and Leary set up a fast, low lean-to, using spear poles and the least damaged parts of the torn pack. Tress helped the hurt cadet shift onto a flat, padded surface, every movement slow and spoken through. Riley handed over a packet of high-energy food and a small amount of extra water. Small sips, she advised. You do not want to shock your system, but you need something in your stomach before pain treatment hits. The injured cadet looked at her with a mix of gratitude and shame. This will cost you, they said. Your team, your course result. Riley shook her head. I grew up with neighbors who shared electricity from a generator during storms, she said. Nobody asked if it would hurt their grade. They just ran extension cords. In the control room, Keth closed his eyes for a brief moment. The simplicity of her answer hit him harder than any shouting would have. The Medrone arrived. Humming softly, it scanned the injury, applied a support splint, and set a transport beacon. The injured cadet would be lifted out soon. The other two would have a choice: return with their teammate and fail this run, or stay and finish short-handed. Riley did not judge what they would choose. She had her own team to think about now. After the Medrone left, she checked her group. Their faces were taut, their shoulders a little lower. The detour had cost them time and energy, but they still had daylight, and they still had enough food and water for a hard push. If we keep moving now, she said, we can still make the final waypoint. It will be a long day, but not impossible. Vale looked at her with something like respect and something like worry. You give away resources, she said. You slow for others. You still talk about finishing. Does any part of this feel hard to you? Riley thought. Before answering, it feels hard, she said. My legs hurt, my hands are cold. I am a little scared of the next night hunger cycle. But this kind of hard is familiar. Back home, the hardest days I saw were after disasters. People carried each other, cleared roads, shared food, slept in gyms with no privacy. That was hard. But it was also very normal. Nobody called it hero work. It was just what you did. Maybe my idea of hard is different from what this course is built to test, she added. Keth heard that line and felt heat rise in his throat. He had designed 7 to be a scar, a clean, teachable line students would feel for years. But he had never stood in a flooded gym, never spent weeks in smoke-clogged air during a wildfire season, never watched neighbors tie sandbags until their hands bled. Maybe his course was not as hard as he thought. Maybe it was just dramatic. By the time Team 13 reached their final waypoint, the artificial sun hung low. Their steps dragged. Their cheeks were red from wind and cold. But their lines held straight. No one limped badly. No one lagged far behind. They checked in, triggered the finish signal, and stood in a small, tight circle, letting the knowledge sink in. They had completed 7, not with the fastest time, not with the most daring route, but with the fewest injuries, the least wasted energy, and a record of helping another team without losing their own mission. Later, in the debrief room, Keth studied Riley from across a clean table. Her hair was still mussed from the field, a stray strand clinging near her temple. Her hands rested, open, on her knees. "You treated my course like camping," he said, without anger. Riley met his eyes. "I treated it like living outside for a while," she said, "with limited resources and people who matter." "You did not act as if you were under attack," he said. "Even when night hunger came near, you did not try to defeat the storm or the predators. You focused on systems, routines, basic kindness." She nodded. "That is how my people survive things," she said. "Not just humans, really. Anyone who faces the same kind of trouble each year. You build habits. You add buffers. You teach kids what to do. It stops being about showing who is toughest. It becomes about making sure more of you get through it." Keth sat back, hearing in her simple words the sharp outline of his own mistake. He had built Practicum 7 to grind ego down, to show that screaming and charging did not work. But in doing so, he had still centered struggle itself, as if misery proved worth. Riley had walked through his course as if it was already a known problem, something a community could prepare for and share. "Do you think suffering is a good teacher?" he asked, more curious than defensive now. "I think pain gets attention," Riley said slowly. "It makes people notice. But if all you teach is pain, students learn to chase it or to fear it. They do not always learn good habits. They just learn that hard means important." She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "Where I grew up, we tried to learn before things hurt. Drills, signs, warnings, stories. Pain still came sometimes. But when it did, we tried to pass the lesson along without making others feel it the same way." Keth was quiet for a long time. Through the window behind him, the training moon floated, its thin atmosphere catching the light. He thought of all the teams who had walked its surface, all the students who had cried from cold or fear, all the instructors who had told them they were stronger now because of the pain. Maybe some were just more numb. Riley shifted in her seat. "Your course is good," she said. "Really, it shows people things about themselves. But you could teach the same points with less waste. You could build in more chances to help, more places where habits matter more than raw endurance." Her voice stayed respectful, but she did not back away from her view. He almost laughed at the strangeness of the moment. A young human camper from a deathworld was sitting in front of him, calmly suggesting changes to a practicum he had spent his life shaping, and he was listening. When she left the room, Keth sat alone for a while, watching the empty chair she had filled. He thought about strength that did not show as scars, power that felt like extra snacks and steady sleep, hardship that came not as a single loud event, but as a long shared effort to keep each other safe. He thought about night hunger and how pleased he had once been when students screamed at its approach. Now he imagined a new challenge, a system that watched for kindness, for shared buffers, for teams who made themselves boring to danger and useful to others. On the moon below, new weather patterns cycled in silent practice. The land was ready for whatever program he wrote next. Keth Varn, survivor of deep oceans and storms, began to plan a quieter, kinder hard, the next run of exo-survival practicum. 7 began 3 months after Riley's debrief. From orbit, the training moon looked the same. Gray plains, folded ridges, thin cloud bands. The drop craft still followed the same path through the pale air. Cadets still checked straps and gear in the staging bay, hearts beating fast with a mix of fear and pride. But under the surface, the course was different. Keth Varn had spent long nights with maps and data tables spread across his office. He replayed old recordings, not just of Riley's team, but of past groups who had stumbled or broken. He saw the same patterns over and over. Teams that pushed too hard on day 1, camps thrown together in the dark, wasted food, short tempers, and harsh words when fear ran high. He circled moments on the screens where small choices could have changed the whole tone. An early camp here, a shared meal there, a decision to help instead of ignore. Tiny things, like the ones Riley had treated as basic. The new version of 7 did not remove hardship. Cold nights still cut through thin air. Freezing rain still stung. Night hunger still prowled. But Keth shifted the way the course judged success. He added quiet sensors that tracked not just heart rates and speeds, but how evenly teams spread weight between members. He logged how often they checked each other for injuries, how they used shared medical kits, how they handled distress calls. He gave small hidden bonuses to groups who built in buffers, who set camp before they were forced to, who kept their sites clean and calm. He also changed the official rules. Now, the guidelines for the course opened with a new line. You are here to learn how to keep more people alive, not how to shine alone. The section on distress calls no longer said, prioritize your own mission unless lives are at risk. It said, you are expected to help when you can do so without causing more harm. Keth watched the first briefing with a strange mix of nerves and hope. He had never been nervous before a course run. Now he was testing his own ideas, not just his students. Riley did not see the new 7 in person. Her exchange term ended a few weeks after her practicum. She had final exams, project reports, and a half-packed bag in her small dorm room. But her name came up often in staff meetings. She got the lowest injury score we have seen. One instructor said, her team's sleep data is almost boring, and they still met every requirement. Her habits were not glamorous, another added, but they were solid. We should be teaching those on purpose, not hoping students pick them up by chance. Keth did not argue. He forwarded Riley's field notes to the curriculum committee. He flagged her quiet routines as model examples. A call came from Earth before she left Aster Vale. The connection window opened in a small room off the main hall. Where students booked time to talk with home, Riley sat in front of the camera, her expression somewhere between tired and content. Her father's face appeared older and softer than she remembered during those long camping trips. He grinned when he saw her. "So," he said, "how is your fancy space school?" "Cold," she said, and very serious about weather. She hesitated, then added, "They have a whole survival course that is basically all the stuff you made me do when I was 10. He laughed at that, eyes crinkling. "Did it help?" he asked. "Yeah," she said simply, "more than I thought." She did not tell him everything. She did not talk about night hunger's growl or the thin taste of the moon's air. She did not say how strange it felt to explain bear bagging to a group of aliens in a freezing rainstorm, but she carried the memory of those conversations into her last week on station. On the day of her departure, Keth asked to meet her one more time. They sat in a small observation room, looking out at the training moon below. Shuttles left bright trails through the upper air. The wide gray plains looked harmless from this far away. "I wanted to thank you," Keth said. Hands folded, voice quiet. Riley blinked. "For what?" she asked. "For treating my course as if it were real life," he said. "Not a stage, not a contest. You showed me things I should have seen earlier." She shifted in her seat, a little uncomfortable with the praise. "I just did what I know," she said. It felt strange that so many people saw survival as a chance to prove something, instead of a chance to get better at not dying. He smiled at that, a small, sad curve of the mouth. "Many of us learn from stories where heroes stand alone," he said. "We forget the quieter stories. The ones where neighbors share food during storms." For a moment they watched the moon in silence. "Will you change it a lot?" Riley asked finally. "I already have," Keth said. "Students will still be cold. They will still be hungry. But now they will also be measured on how they care for each other, on how they plan, on how they stay kind when things are tight." He paused, then added, "There is a new section in the prep classes about camping systems. We used that word on purpose. It seems to work for humans. We will see how it lands with others." Rayleigh's lips twitched. "So the SCAR course gets softer?" she asked. "Not softer," he said. "Smarter. It will cut in different places now. Less into skin, more into old habits." She nodded slowly. "That sounds harder to brag about," she said. "Good," he replied. "Perhaps that will keep the worst show-offs away." The transport call came through the station, gentle and firm. Riley stood, slung her small bag over her shoulder, and turned to go. She paused at the door. "Professor," she said, "thanks for listening." Keth dipped his head. "Thank you for not trying to be a hero," he said. "You are something more useful instead." She carried that strange compliment with her all the way down the hall, into the lift, and onto the shuttle that would start her long trip back to Earth. Months later, news of the new 7 reached her world. It came not as a headline, but as a small note in an interspecies field manual. Recent revisions to Exosurvival Practicum 7 now emphasize collective resilience, resource buffering, and psychological regulation. Case study: R. Morgan, Human Exchange Cadet, Aster Vale Cohort 2474. Her university advisor sent her a copy with a short message. "Looks like you started something." She read it after a long day of work in a small mountain lab, the kind that studied how forests grew back after fires. Outside the window, real snow fell in slow, fat flakes, covering the ground in white. She smiled, then went back to sorting soil samples. Life on Earth went on, quiet, steady, full of its own small risks and routines. Back at Aster Vale, new cadets lined up in the staging bay. For the first run of the revised 7, they came from soft garden worlds and rough mining moons, from bright city space stations and quiet farming belts. Some had heard the old legends of the Scar Course. Others only knew the new description: a practicum on systems, buffers, and group survival. In the briefing, an instructor from Keth's team stood at the front and spoke in clear, simple words. "You are not here to prove you are the toughest," she said. "You are here to prove you can keep a team steady under stress. That means planning. That means leaving room for surprise. That means helping others even when you are tired." She clicked to a slide showing a neat camp layout. Low shelters, smart lines, food hung downwind. In the corner, very small, was a still image of Riley's first camp, taken from a drone. A human with a braid, back turned, hands busy with a line. "This is an example of what works," the instructor said. "Not flashy, just careful. You will learn this kind of thing before you ever touch the moon." In a high observation room, Keth watched the new group listen. He saw some faces fall a little sad, as if they had wanted a chance to show off. He saw others relax in relief, comforted by the idea that success did not mean suffering for its own sake. Beside him, a younger instructor shifted from foot to foot. "Do you think they will still respect the course?" she asked. "If it is not brutal." Keth kept his eyes on the cadets. "If they respect living things," he said, "they will respect anything that helps them keep those things alive. The rest does not matter." The first drop cycle under the new rules surprised even him. Teams set up camp earlier than before. They checked maps against landmarks without yelling. They divided gear by strength and size, not by status. Some still argued, some still made mistakes. But the tone had changed. Night hunger still roamed. It still sent that low hunting sound across the rocks, but this time more camps were quiet and clean. More teams chose to be dull and safe, rather than brave and messy. The distress flares still went up. Ankles twisted, hands slipped, nerves frayed. When a flare burst bright over the horizon, nearby teams shifted without much talk. They checked their own supplies, weighed their buffers, and moved to help if they could. Keth watched 3 different teams divert in the first season alone. All three made it back to their main route in time. Two of them still finished with strong scores. The third did not, but the group stood together in the debrief, proud of their choice. It felt like what we signed up for, a cadet from a low-gravity world said. Not a game, real training for real work. In the years that followed, the story of the camping human spread, quietly across stations and ships. Sometimes Riley's name was attached, sometimes it was not. The details changed in the telling. In one version, she fought off night hunger with nothing but a tent pole. In another, she predicted every storm with a single sniff of the air. People like to make simple things dramatic, but under the noise, the true core remained. A human from a risk-heavy world had treated a harsh alien survival course as organized camping. Her steady habits had pulled the teeth from the worst dangers without making the course easy. Her choice to help another team had proved that carrying others did not always mean failing yourself. Cadets from gentle planets started reading human camping guides before taking 7. They learned about layering clothes, about using the land's shape to block wind, about keeping food smells away from sleep. They shared those ideas with classmates from other worlds, adding their own home skills to the mix. In response, field manuals changed. New sections appeared with simple titles. Setting up camp before you are desperate. Building buffers without hoarding. Helping without collapsing. Staying kind when you are cold. These were not the kind of sections that made for dramatic hollows or famous speeches. They did not produce bold, single hero scenes. They produced something else. Something else, Dine. They produced crews who arrived on fragile new worlds and did not panic at the first dust storm. Teams who heard strange night animals and did not empty their energy into fear. Groups who kept an extra water filter, an extra rope, an extra meal, not for themselves alone, but for whoever might need it. On a far frontier planet, years after Riley's practicum, a mixed species team of young exobiologists set up camp near a delicate wetland. The wind shifted at dusk, sharp and cold. Dark shapes moved in the reeds, calling in unfamiliar tones. Their leader, a slim student from a high-pressure ocean world, checked the sky, then the map, then their supplies. We set camp low and early, she said. We hang the food downwind. We take turns resting while our bodies learn the sounds. This is just camping, remember. Different stars, same rules. The others nodded. Some nervous, some calm. They had all read about Practicum 7. They had all heard in some form about the human who treated hard things like normal life and changed how survival was taught. They set their shelters. They shared their meals. They checked each other's feet. Under the thin light of a new sun, they slept, up in orbit. Far from that small camp, Aster Vale Academy turned slowly in space, its windows bright. In the training department, a worn copy of Riley Morgan's Field notes sat on a shelf beside thick manuals from a dozen worlds. Keth, older now, with a few more lines on his face, sometimes took that set of notes down and turned the pages. He liked the margin comments best. Small scribbles about cord knots, reminders to check water seams, quick sketches of camp layouts. There was nothing dramatic in those pages, nothing that would make a stirring speech, just the power of careful attention stacked day after day. He had spent years thinking survival was about standing against the world, about proving strength by how much pain a person could take. A human camper had shown him another kind of power, the kind that packs extra, that rests early, that makes room for others inside the circle of warmth. In the end, that was the scar Practicum 7 left on him, a line not of hurt, but of changed mind. Somewhere on Earth, under a sky thick with real weather, Riley Morgan walked a mountain trail with a small group of students from her own university. She watched their feet on loose rocks, reminded them to drink water before they felt thirsty, and stopped early to choose a good spot for their tents. One of the students groaned. "We could go farther," he said. "The light's still good," Riley smiled. "We could," she agreed, "but we will hike better tomorrow if we sleep well tonight." Think of this as cheap insurance. She did not tell them about night hunger or freezing rain on a distant moon. She did not need to. The same rules lived here too. As they set up camp, someone asked, "Do you ever wish stuff like this felt more epic?" Riley tightened a line, checked the angle against the wind, and shook her head. "I like it like this," she said, "quiet, shared, and a little bit boring. That is how you know the systems are working." The fire crackled. The air cooled. The students laughed over simple meals, already a little more at ease because of routines they did not fully understand yet. Far above, in different corners of the galaxy, other small camps did the same. Tents low against the wind, food hung out of reach, extra blankets packed not for bragging rights, but for the person who forgot theirs. The hardest work in all those places did not look like a battle. It looked like care, and that, in the long view, was the lesson Aster Vale finally chose to teach. That real survival is not about who stands tallest in the storm, but about who bothers to set up shelter so everyone can stand at all.